Everyone left her for dead, but a human's touch brought the alien woman back. The mining colony of Titan 7 had seen better days. Metal buildings stood like broken teeth against the gray sky, their walls scarred by years of ice storms and neglect. Most people had left when the ore veins ran dry, but some stayed behind. They had nowhere else to go. Jake Morrison was one of them. At 28, he had already spent 10 years working the mines. His hands were rough from handling machinery, and his brown eyes held the tired look of someone who had seen too much. He lived alone in a small cabin on the edge of town, fixing broken equipment for the few remaining miners. That morning started like any other. Jake walked through the empty streets, his boots crunching on frozen ground. The cold bit through his jacket, making him pull it tighter around his chest. He was heading to the old cemetery to visit his brother's grave, something he did every month without fail. The cemetery lay beyond the abandoned mining towers. Rows of simple metal markers stood in the frozen earth, marking the final resting places of workers who never made it home. Jake's brother David was buried there, killed in a tunnel collapse 3 years ago. Jake blamed himself for not being there that day. As he approached David's grave, something caught his eye. Near the far edge of the cemetery, the ground had collapsed into a small crater. Fresh snow had drifted over it, but something glinted underneath. Jake's curiosity got the better of him. He walked over and brushed away the snow with his gloved hands. What he found made his heart skip a beat. Lying in the depression was a woman, but not like any woman he had ever seen. Her skin had a faint blue tint, and delicate silver markings traced patterns along her arms and face. Her hair was white as snow, spread around her head like spun silk. She wore a strange garment that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. The fabric looked torn and damaged, as if she had been through some kind of struggle. Her body was completely still, covered in a thin layer of frost. Jake's first thought was that she was dead, but something made him check for signs of life. He pulled off his glove and pressed his fingers against her neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. Her skin felt like ice against his palm. He tried her wrist and placed his ear against her chest. Still nothing. Jake sat back on his heels, staring at the strange woman. Who was she? How had she ended up in the cemetery? The questions swirled in his mind, but one thing was clear: she didn't belong here. No one deserved to be left alone in the frozen ground. Without really thinking about it, Jake began chest compressions. His mining work had made him strong, and he pressed down on her chest with steady rhythm. He had learned basic first aid in the mines, but he had never used it on someone who looked so different from him. After several compressions, he tilted her head back and breathed air into her lungs. Her lips were cold against his, tasting of something he couldn't identify. He continued the pattern, compressions, then rescue breaths, over and over. The wind howled around them, cutting through his jacket and numbing his hands. Jake's arms began to ache, but he didn't stop. Something deep inside him refused to give up on her. Maybe it was because he had failed to save David. Maybe it was because she looked so young and fragile lying there in the snow. Then, without warning, her eyes snapped open. They were the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen, pale violet with flecks of silver that seemed to glow from within. She gasped, her body jerking as life flowed back into her limbs. She tried to speak, but only weak. Sounds came out. Jake could see the fear in her eyes as she looked around, taking in the cemetery and the gray sky above. She attempted to sit up, but her body was too weak. "Easy," Jake said softly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. I'm going to help you." She stared at him with those incredible eyes, and Jake felt something shift inside his chest. In that moment, looking down at this mysterious woman he had brought back from the edge of death, He knew his life would never be the same. Jake's cabin was small but warm. He had built it himself, from salvaged mining equipment and insulation. Panels. The main room served as kitchen, living room, and workshop all in one. A wood-burning stove in the corner provided heat, while shelves lined the walls, filled with spare parts and tools. He carried the alien woman inside and laid her carefully on his bed. She was lighter than he expected, her bones feeling delicate, beneath the strange fabric of her clothing. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and the violet glow in her eyes had dimmed to a soft sparkle. Jake covered her with his warmest blankets and started a fire in the stove. The cabin began to warm up quickly, and he could see some color returning to her blue-tinted skin. He heated water in a pot and found some clean cloths, wanting to help, but not sure what she might need. "Can you understand me?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. She turned her head toward him, those amazing eyes focusing on his face. She nodded slowly. "My name is Jake," he said, pointing to himself. "Jake Morrison." She opened her mouth and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Zara," she whispered. The word sounded musical, unlike anything he had heard before. "Zara," Jake repeated, smiling. "That's a beautiful name." Over the next few hours, Jake did everything he could to make her comfortable. He brought her warm soup, though she could only manage a few sips. He found some of his softer clothes for her to wear when her damaged garment fell apart. She was embarrassed at first, but Jake turned away while she changed, respecting her privacy as the day passed. Zara grew stronger. She was able to sit up and even stand for short periods. Jake noticed that her skin had a natural luminescence that became more pronounced when she was healthy. The silver markings on her arms and face seemed to pulse gently, like a slow heartbeat. "Where are you from?" Jake asked that evening as they sat by the fire. Zara pointed upward, toward the sky beyond his small window. "The stars," she said in her musical voice. "My ship crashed. Others came. They thought I was dead." Her English was accented but clear, as if she had learned it from studying human broadcasts. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "They left you to die?" Zara nodded sadly. "My people, we are not like yours. When we appear dead, we enter a healing sleep. But they did not know. They buried me and left." "Well, they're idiots," Jake said firmly. "Nobody deserves to be abandoned." Like that, for the first time since he found her, Zara smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her even more beautiful. Jake felt his heart skip a beat as the days passed. Zara recovered more of her strength. She helped Jake around the cabin, learning to use human tools and appliances. Her touch seemed to fix things that had been broken. His old radio began picking up clear signals, and his temperamental heater started working perfectly. "You have a gift," Jake observed, watching her repair his broken coffee maker with just a gentle touch. "My people are what you would call engineers," Zara explained. "We understand how things work, how to make them better. But your technology is different, more emotional." "Emotional?" Zara placed her hand over her heart. "Human machines carry the feelings of their makers. Your coffee maker remembers the morning happiness it brought you. Your radio holds memories of music and laughter. I can feel these things when I touch them." Jake stared at her in wonder. "That's incredible." As they spent more time together, Jake found himself falling for Zara in ways he had never expected. She was brilliant and kind, with a curiosity about everything human. She asked endless questions about his life, his work, his feelings about losing his brother. "You carry much sadness," she observed one evening, touching his hand gently. Jake felt a warm sensation spread up his arm, like sunlight on a cold day. "I couldn't save David," Jake admitted. I should have been there with him in the mine that day. You could not have stopped the mountain from falling, Zara said softly. But you saved me. That matters too. Jake looked into her glowing eyes and felt something he thought he had lost forever, hope. I'm glad I found you, he whispered. I am glad you did not give up on me, Zara replied, squeezing his hand. That night, as they sat together by the fire, Jake realized that love didn't always look the way people expected. Sometimes it came in the form of an alien woman with Violet, eyes and a touch that could heal both machines and hearts. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found Zara in the cemetery. The cabin that once felt empty and cold now felt like a real home. Zara had made small improvements everywhere. The windows let in more light, the stove burned more efficiently, and even the creaky floorboards had stopped squeaking under her gentle touch. Jake found himself looking forward to each new day in a way he hadn't since David died. Zara was endlessly fascinating. She could make beautiful music by touching his old pipes, turning them into instruments that produced haunting melodies. She showed him how to see patterns in the ice formations outside their window, reading them, like stories written by the wind. Your world is so alive, Zara said one morning as they watched the sunrise paint the frozen landscape in shades of pink and gold. Every snowflake carries the memory of the cloud it came from. Every rock holds the history of the mountain. I never thought of it that way, Jake admitted, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned back against his chest, and he marveled at how perfectly she fit there. That is because you see with human eyes, Zara said, tilting her head to look up at him. You see the surface, but I see the connections underneath. Like the connection between us. Jake's heart raced. They had grown closer each day, but neither had spoken directly about their feelings. What kind of connection? He asked quietly, turned in his arms to face him. Among my people, we call it soul weaving. When two beings share deep understanding, their life forces begin to synchronize. I have never felt it with anyone before you. She placed her hand over his heart, and Jake felt that familiar warm sensation spreading through his chest. Your heart beats differently now, she said softly. Stronger, more alive, and mine does the same. Jake cupped her face in his hands, running his thumbs along the delicate silver markings on her cheeks. I love you, Zara. I know it sounds crazy. After such a short time, but she silenced him with a kiss. Her lips were warm now, not cold like that first day. They tasted like starlight and promises. When they broke apart, her eyes were glowing brighter than ever. Love is not measured by time, she whispered. It is measured by depth, and what we have runs deeper than the roots of mountains. Their relationship deepened over the following days. Jake learned that Zara's people lived for centuries, but she was still young by their standards, only about 70 years old, equivalent to a human in her 20s. She had been part of an exploration mission, studying different worlds and their inhabitants. I was the xenobiologist, she explained, as they worked together to repair his mining scanner. I studied how different species adapt to their environments. But I never expected to adapt to one myself. Are you adapting? Jake asked, watching her delicate fingers work with the human technology. Every day, Zara replied, looking up at him with a smile. My body temperature has adjusted to match yours. My sleep cycle has synchronized with your day and night. Even my healing abilities work better here than they did on my ship. Maybe it's not the planet, Jake suggested. Maybe it's me. Zara's eyes sparkled with joy. Yes, that is exactly what I think too. They began planning a future together. Jake talked about fixing up some of the abandoned buildings in the colony, creating a workshop where Zara could experiment with combining human and alien technology. Zara described the gardens she wanted to grow, using techniques from her world to make plants thrive in the harsh climate. We could make this place beautiful again, Jake said one evening as they stood on his porch, looking out at the broken down, mining buildings. "It is already beautiful," Zara replied, slipping her hand into his, "because you are here." But their happiness was about to be tested. One night, as they sat by the fire sharing stories about their childhoods, bright lights appeared in the sky above the colony. The lights moved in precise formations, clearly artificial. "Ships," Zara breathed, her face going pale. "My people have returned." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Are they here for you?" Zara nodded slowly. "They must have detected my life signs. They will want to take me back." "What if you don't want to go?" Jake asked, though he already feared the answer. "They will not understand," Zara said quietly. "My people, we do not form attachments to other species. They will think I am sick or damaged." Jake pulled her close, holding her tight against his chest. "Then we'll have to convince them otherwise." As the alien ships descended toward the colony, Jake made a silent promise to himself. He had found love in the most unexpected place, with the most extraordinary person. He wasn't going to lose her without a fight. The woman he had brought back from the dead had brought him back to life. Now it was time to prove that love could bridge any gap, even the vast distance between worlds. The alien ships landed in the center of the abandoned mining colony just after dawn. Jake and Zara watched from his window as 3 sleek vessels settled onto the frozen ground, their surfaces reflecting the gray morning light like mirrors. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, nothing like the rough human ships Jake had seen at the spaceport. "How long do we have?" Jake asked, his arm tight around Zara's shoulders. "Not long," she replied, her voice tense with worry. "They will scan the area and find me within minutes." Jake grabbed his jacket and handed Zara her coat, one he had bought for her from the colony's last remaining shop. "Then let's go meet them." "Jake, no," Zara protested. "You do not understand. My people are not cruel, but they are rigid in their thinking. They will not accept our bond." "Then we'll have to change their minds," Jake said firmly. "I'm not losing you, Zara. Not after everything we've been through." They walked hand in hand through the empty streets toward the landing site. Jake could feel Zara trembling beside him. Whether from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. As they approached the ships, a ramp extended from the nearest vessel. 3 figures emerged, tall and graceful like Zara, but somehow different. Their skin had a more pronounced blue tint, and their silver markings were arranged in complex geometric patterns. They wore form-fitting suits that seemed to shift color in the light. The leader was a stern-looking woman with white hair pulled back severely, and eyes that glowed with cold authority. She spotted Zara immediately and began speaking in a language that sounded like music played too fast. "Speak in standard," Zara replied in English. "The human understands." The leader's gaze shifted to Jake with obvious distaste. "You have been contaminated, Zara Kalin," she said, her accent making each word sound sharp. "This primitive has infected you with his crude emotions." "High Commander Veleth," Zara said formally, bowing her head slightly. "I greet you with respect. But you are wrong about Jake. He saved my life." "Your life was never in danger," Commander Veleth replied coldly. "You entered healing stasis after the crash. We left you to recover as protocol demands." "You left me to die in a frozen grave," Zara said, her voice gaining strength. "Jake found me and brought me back with his own hands. Without him, I would have frozen to death in that cemetery." Jake stepped forward, trying to ignore how the 3 aliens studied him like an interesting specimen. "I don't know much about your protocols," he said, "but I know Zara wasn't breathing when I found her. Her heart had stopped. I had to perform CPR to bring her back." Commander Veleth's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Our biology does not require your primitive life support methods." "Then explain this," Zara said, pulling off her glove to show her hand. The silver markings on her skin were brighter than before, pulsing with a steady rhythm that matched Jake's heartbeat. My biopatterns have synchronized with his. We are bonded. The other two aliens exchanged shocked glances. Commander Veleth stared at Zara's hand with something approaching horror. "This is aberrant," she said finally. "You have corrupted your genetic pattern with alien DNA. The contamination must be cleansed immediately." "It's not contamination," Jake said angrily. "It's love? Love?" Commander Veleth spoke the word like it tasted bad. "You speak of the primitive emotion that causes your species to behave irrationally. We evolved beyond such weaknesses millennia ago. If love is weakness, then I choose to be weak," Zara said, moving closer to Jake. "This human showed me what your people had forgotten, that life is more than just existence. It is connection, growth, joy." Jake reached for her hand, and as their fingers touched, both of their markings flared brighter. The light spread up their arms, creating patterns that danced between them like living art. "Remarkable," whispered one of the other aliens, a younger male who had been silent until now. "The bioluminescent resonance is unlike anything in our records." "Science Officer Keth," Commander Veleth said sharply, "do not be deceived by this display. The female has been compromised. We will return her to the ship for genetic purification." "You will not," Jake said, stepping between them and Zara. "She's not your property. She can make her own choices." Commander Veleth regarded him with cold amusement. "And what would a primitive like you do to stop us?" Jake smiled grimly. "Try to take her and find out." What happened next surprised everyone. As the commander reached for Zara, Jake grabbed her wrist. The moment his skin touched hers, every piece of electronic equipment in the area went haywire. The alien ship's displays flickered and sparked. Communication devices squealed with feedback. Even the old mining machinery scattered around the colony began to hum with unexpected power. "Impossible," Commander Veleth breathed, staring at her malfunctioning scanner. "Jake," Zara whispered in wonder, "your touch is amplifying my abilities." Science Officer Keth was taking readings with a device that kept changing colors. "Commander, the energy output is off the scale. Their combined biofield is affecting technology within a quarter-mile radius." Jake looked down at his hands, then at Zara. "I don't understand. I'm just human." "No," Zara said softly, her eyes wide with realization. "You are not just anything. Jake Morrison, you are the bridge between our worlds. When you brought me back to life, something changed in both of us. We have become something new." Commander Veleth stared at them both, her cold composure finally cracking. For the first time since landing, she looked uncertain. "This changes everything," she said quietly. The next few hours changed everything Jake thought he knew about himself, about Zara, and about what was possible when two different worlds came together. Commander Veleth had reluctantly agreed to postpone their departure while Science Officer Keth studied the energy phenomenon that Jake and Zara had created. They set up equipment in Jake's cabin, turning his simple home into a makeshift laboratory filled with devices that hummed and glowed with alien technology. "The readings are unprecedented," Keth explained to Commander Veleth as Jake and Zara sat together on the bed, their hands intertwined. "Their biosignatures have merged at the quantum level. They are literally sharing life force. But how is this possible?" The commander asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial disgust. "The human has no enhanced genetics, no evolutionary adaptations." Keth adjusted his scanner and pointed it at Jake. "Actually, he does. Hidden deep in his genetic code are dormant sequences that match nothing in our databases. When Zara's healing energy touched his, it activated these dormant traits." Jake felt overwhelmed by the technical discussion. "Can someone explain this?" In simple terms, Zara squeezed his hand gently. Remember how I told you that I could feel the emotions in your machines? Well, it seems you have a gift too. You can amplify the gifts of others. When you touched me, when you refused to let me die, you awakened something in both of us. Your species calls them healers, Keth added, consulting his notes. Individuals who appear throughout human history during times of great need. Most never discover their abilities. But you, Jake Morrison, found yours in the moment when it mattered. Most. Commander Veleth paced the small cabin, her expression troubled. Even if this is true, it does not change our mission parameters. Zara Kallin must return with us to complete her assignment. What if she doesn't want to go? Jake asked. Want is irrelevant, the commander replied. She has duties to our people. And what about my duties to him? Zara stood up, her markings glowing brighter with emotion. Jake saved my life and showed me what I had been missing. My people spent so long trying to be perfect that we forgot how to truly live. The third alien, who had remained silent during most of the discussion, finally spoke up. She was older than the others, with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded Jake of his grandmother. Commander, she said in a voice like gentle wind chimes, perhaps we should consider the larger implications of what we have discovered here. Elder. Knife, Commander Veleth said with obvious respect. What do you mean? Our people have grown cold and distant over the centuries, Elder Knife replied. We have gained great knowledge and long life, but we have lost the passion that once drove us to explore the stars. Look at young Zara. She glows brighter than she ever has. This human has awakened something in her that our entire civilization has forgotten. Jake felt a flutter of hope in his chest. Are you saying you might let her stay? Elder Knight smiled at him. I am saying that perhaps it is time for our people to learn from yours, just as you might learn from us. The universe is vast and full of wonders we have yet to discover. But the greatest wonder may be the connections we make along the way. Commander Veleth looked uncertain. Elder Knife, our laws are clear. Emotional attachments lead to chaos and poor judgment. Do they? Elder Knife asked. Or do they lead to growth and new possibilities? She gestured to Jake and Zara, whose joined hands were creating gentle spirals of light in the air around them. Look at what their attachment has created. Together, they have abilities that neither possessed alone. Over the next several days, a compromise was reached. Zara would remain on Titan 7 with Jake, but they would also serve as ambassadors between their two species. The abandoned mining colony would be transformed into a research station where humans and Zara's people could work together, learning from each other. You will have other humans coming here, Commander Veleth explained as they prepared to depart. Scientists, engineers, diplomats. And we will send some of our people to work alongside them. Jake could hardly believe it. You're really going to let her stay? We are going to let both of you build something new, Elder Knight corrected gently. Something that neither of our species could create alone. As the alien ships prepared to leave, Jake and Zara stood together, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The abandoned mining colony around them was already beginning to change. Construction equipment was being shipped in, and the first group of human scientists would arrive within the week. Are you sure about this? Jake asked, pulling Zara close. You're giving up everything you knew for me. Zara smiled up at him, her violet eyes sparkling with joy. I am not giving up anything, my love. I am gaining everything. Besides, she added with a mischievous grin, someone needs to teach these humans how to properly fix their broken coffee makers. Jake laughed and kissed her, feeling the familiar warmth spread through his chest. Around them, the lights of the colony began to flicker on, not the harsh industrial lighting of before, but something softer and more welcoming, touched by alien. Technology and human ingenuity working together. As night fell over Titan 7, Jake reflected on how his life had changed. He had gone from being a lonely miner counting down the days until he could leave, to being part of something bigger than he had ever imagined. All because he had refused to leave someone to die alone in the cold. "Thank you," he whispered to Zara as they headed back to their cabin, which would soon become the first embassy between two worlds. "For what?" she asked. "For letting me save you," Jake replied, "and for saving me right back." Hand in hand, the human and the alien woman who had brought each other back to life walked into their future together, ready to build a bridge between the stars.